right, you okay with me starting to let everyone in? So again, just remember, I'm going to welcome everyone in, set the room. You're gonna read your bio, and then I'll say you have the floor, and then take it away. I'll stop sharing. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, wait, I have the music. Never mind. Okay. Welcome everyone to the Human Trafficking Prevention Workshop. This is Eta Alpha Pi Sorority Incorporated's second event of the 2024 sorority year. My name is Meelah Lowery, and I have the esteemed honor of serving as the founder of the organization, but also as a sister and as a friend. And on behalf of the groundbreaking grand chapter and all of our esteemed members of the sorority, we say welcome. We really have a special treat tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because tonight, well, today rather, is National Human Trafficking Day. So on this day, around the country, organizations, individuals are raising awareness to human trafficking. They are posting on social media. They are holding events just like this or in person to encourage people like you and me to get out and do the work to not only save our children, but our men and women. And so we have a great opportunity tonight as we partner with Harbour Hope International. They are an esteemed nonprofit here in the Central Florida area. They do a plethora of community initiatives and has a specific arm that focuses on anti-human trafficking. And so we're so excited that they're here with us tonight. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to set the room. We just ask that you remain on mute. And if you have a comment or a question, feel free to use the chat. I will be monitoring that on tonight as our speaker is presenting. Or if there is any emotion that you just simply want to convey based off of the information that's being provided, feel free to drop an emoji in that chat. Let us know how you really feeling tonight. This is about you, it's about me, it's about all of us coming together in the name of service and community empowerment. So who do we have presenting tonight? She is a pediatric advanced practice registered nurse. She has been a pediatric nurse for 26 years, working primarily with children in specialized situations such as neonatal critical care, special needs children, and children who are victims of abuse and neglect. She has been a pediatric board certified advanced practice registered nurse for 10 years, 8 of which she has worked for the Child Protection Team, conducting physical examinations of children with allegations of abuse and neglect. Over the last few years, she has taken a special interest in working in the human trafficking field, both professionally and as a ministry mentor in self-protection field. She is a certified human trafficking specialist and considered a child abuse expert in court to be qualified to testify in criminal and dependency matters. So I present to some of you and introduce to others. This is Heather Palasky. Welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lowery. I'm so excited to be able to be here tonight. It's a very challenging discussion, but it's so important for us to be able to educate the community. Human trafficking has become prevalent in all areas. And I know some people kind of think that this is something that, you know, we see in other countries and all that kind of stuff. And it really is right here in our backyards. Unfortunately, in the work that I do, we see it very frequently. And they're some of our most challenging cases. And so I just want to be able to give you all the opportunity tonight to learn how you can protect the kids that are in your lives, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, an aunt, a teacher, a guardian caregiver in some capacity, to be able to learn how we can protect our children the most. So this is probably the most you're going to see of me, because I'm going to share my slides with you so you have something else to look at and some information. So give me 1 minute and I will get started sharing my screen with you. All right, so as we spoke, I am representing Harbour Hope today. And everybody can see my screen, right? Can you give me a thumbs up? All right, good. Making sure technology is working with us today. So there are different forms of human trafficking, most often referred as labor trafficking or domestic servitude and sex trafficking. So a lot of times when we hear human trafficking, we think of only one thing, which might be sex trafficking, but there are different forms of it. And so we just want to go through that a little bit and explain what each one is. Human trafficking is modern day slavery. It involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act. So commercial sex acts would include pornography, prostitution, or some sexual performance done in exchange for any item of value. So money, drugs, shelter, food, clothing. Sex trafficking occurs when a person is induced to perform a commercial sex act through the use of force, fraud, or coercion, or in which the person induced to the person to act is under 18. Oops, sorry, my fault. Online trafficking is $1 billion industry. So predators will take their time grooming a child, and this process can take place either quickly or over an extended period of time. Predators will watch what teens are doing online and begin to develop a profile from which to recruit and groom them. All of this information will be used in the predator's tactics. 75% of US teens have an active social media account, and most teens spend 3 to 9 hours a day or more on social media. And we give you some of the outlines in terms of the percentages of time spent on different social media outlets. 91% post photos of themselves. 71% post the town or city they live in or where they go to hang out. And 84% post their interests and likes. In addition to that, I also want to share that, parents do this too. I spend a lot of time educating family and friends when they are sharing information about their kids and the safest way to do this. So unfortunately, we can put our own kids in danger when we're sharing the town that they're in. We tag them into different locations. And especially when we have this public on Facebook and Instagram and those kinds of things. And other people can know what our kids are doing or what they're up to. And that can all be very dangerous. The apps kids are using are constantly changing. The Omegle app's tagline is, quote unquote, talk to strangers. One of the #1 apps being used to recruit youth in Lake County is Discord, which started out as an online gaming app for gamers to communicate and has grown. In the work that I do, we do forensic interviews with children who come to us for abuse and neglect. We kind of look at all areas of risk. So they may not be coming to us regarding a sexual allegation. So we kind of interview all the minors who come into our building. And I would say almost every single teen female is engaged on Snapchat and has been sent or requested to send pictures of themselves or had people they didn't know randomly send them pictures that they hadn't asked for. So I'd be curious if you went home and you have a teenager at home or a middle schooler even and ask them if they've ever had anybody send them pictures like that. I think you'd be really surprised, unfortunately, with that answer. But Snapchat is very, very common as well. And because the messages disappear within 24 hours, typically, it's a common way for people to be able to send messages and pictures. Now, law enforcement can usually retrieve those pictures and messages, but from the person's standpoint, they think that that this is going to go away after 24 hours. So let's talk about online grooming and recruitment. This is how traffickers are identifying their next victim through online apps and gaming primarily. Trafficking is primarily a game of psychology. Traffickers prey on vulnerable individuals. So traffickers do some form of grooming to recruit or find a girl or boy. The beginning of the process is similar to how anyone would start a friendship or romantic relationship. The perpetrator will identify a potential victim. They will gain their trust. They share, they keep secrets, they develop a friendship. And once a relationship is established, the perpetrator will push sexual boundaries, sell lies, and flip a switch. They seem like they're a friend. So predators conduct research on the child, searching social media profiles. They become friendly and they may even send gifts online, like gift cards or game upgrades. The in-person relationship begins, or the predator may begin to exert pressure on the child to participate in online sexting or sharing compromising photos. So I gave you that, now you have to do something for me. And then the information that they share is used to coerce them. They develop trust. Predators will appear sympathetic and understanding, shower their victims with compliments and send them gifts, make promises that appeal to the child. So they might say, no one understands you, but I do. Your life is hard and I'll make it better. Or I know how you can make a lot of money. They share and keep secrets, like become their best friend. Victims become dependent on the predator and interpreting as it being a romantic relationship. And this gives the predator an opportunity to control them. They share secret desires and wishes, cares, and hopes. They tell the child a secret, and then they follow it with, please don't tell anyone, this is just ours. And then they get the child to share something personal with them and assure them that it's just between us. You can trust me, I won't tell anybody. They push sexual boundaries, they sell lies, and then they flip a switch. As the conversation and the relationship progresses, the predator will gain the confidence of the child and test their boundaries by exposing them to sexual conversations and pornography. Through continuous exposure, the predator hopes to lower the inhibitions of the victim and exert influence on them. The process continues until the child feels comfortable sending them compromising sexual photos, which the predator can then use for extortion or blackmail. So they might say, I do as I tell you, or I'll send your photos, or send these messages to your parents, or I'll post them on social media. They sell lies. The predator will introduce the victim to new quote unquote friends and maybe even get them hooked on drugs so that they need the predator more. The predator keeps the child swept off their feet. They get jealous easily, flattering the child that they want the victim to be only his or hers. And eventually they begin to control all the child's movements and schedule. And then they flip the switch. Once the predator has met with the child and engaged in illicit activities, either in person or online, and then he begins to make threats. The predator warns the child that he will carry out the threats if he or she does not agree to cooperate. This form of blackmail is intended to maintain power and control and to keep the victim silenced. So you might wonder, is my child vulnerable? So some of the types of things that we look at in terms of what the child is looking for, if they're seeking love and acceptance, if they want to fit in, if they feel misunderstood, if they feel insecure or lonely. Now, if you remember being a teenager yourself, every teen feels some of these things from time to time. Therefore, every child is vulnerable. Predators make it their business to find out what a child's hopes, dreams, and hurts are so that they can exploit them. A child might be communicating with an online predator or watching porn. These are some of the signs that you might see. They start withdrawing from their family or friends. They're overly obsessed with being online. They hide their device screens from others. They become upset when they don't have Wi-Fi access or cell service. If they're receiving actual pornography from someone, or receiving or sending text messages with nude pictures or explicit language. The fact of the matter is that sex trafficking and porn is a much bigger issue than most people realize. According to cases reported to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, pornography was the third most common form of sex trafficking after escort services and illicit massage businesses. I know that we don't like to talk about this issue of pornography because it's often seen as taboo. The reality is that this is a very real issue, especially now that this generation has access online at their fingertips. The issue is no longer whether we should discuss this rather than what we can do to identify the issue and to protect our children. So these are some of the dangers of pornography: addiction, exposure to violent and degrading content, unhealthy attitudes about sex, increased risk of sexual abuse. It destroys families and marriages, mental health issues, and increased risk for child-on-child harmful sexual behavior. Sex trafficking victims can be forced, tricked, or coerced into sexual and pornography production. Porn performers can be trafficked into acts that they didn't consent to. Porn can be used to groom trafficking victims and train them on what is expected of them. Porn can normalize sexual violence and objectify to the extent that in some cases, the desensitization of consumers can manifest in more willingness to buy sex, thus increasing the demand for sexual exploitation and trafficking. So what can we do? Remind our kids of the following virtual safety tips. Think before you post. Remind them that there are no takebacks. Never send or post or share a sexually suggestive picture or video, and tell your parent if someone sends and or requests explicit images. Don't accept any online activity meant to intimidate, threaten, tease, harm you or someone else. Let a parent or a trusted adult know if this is occurring. And they should tell you immediately if they receive a threatening, mean, or sexual message, and then block further communications. Get parent approval before opening or downloading new apps. Respect others online. Never share or send information that might hurt or embarrass someone. Never use vulgar or sexually explicit language. Make sure they understand that they cannot recognize a disguised predator who may pose as a kid or a trusted adult to begin the grooming process. Predators often take conversations outside the app where interactions can be less easily monitored. Teach them how to recognize the grooming tactics of predators and traffickers. including this trust and relationship building, offering of love and romance, gifts, jobs, or the promise of a better life. So the big C's: keep current with technology. You don't have to be an expert, but a little understanding goes a long way towards keeping children safe online. Get basic technical training and learn about new products as they're released. Keep communicating with your child about everything they experience on the internet. Know their lingo and ask when you don't understand something. Work to keep communication lines open. Keep checking your child's internet activity. Know where they go online. Let them know that you'll keep checking because you want them to understand that the internet is a public forum and they're never truly private. So how can we prepare younger children who are not online from when they are older and begin to engage in the digital world? Empower them to say no. Teach your child that they can refuse any touch or space intrusion that makes them feel uncomfortable. Always stress that if someone touches them in a way that they don't like, to tell that person to stop, and always to tell you about it. Keep the lines of communication open, and especially talking about private areas of their bodies. Be sure that they know that you will always believe them. When we talk to children who have like a late disclosure of sexual abuse and we find out the reasons that they had not disclosed immediately, most often, even when they've had parents tell them that they would believe them, most time they either think they're going to get in trouble or they think that somebody's not going to believe them. After your child has spent some time with someone else, ask them, apart from that person, how did they spend their time? What was their favorite part of their day? What was the least favorite part of the day? Did anything happen that made them sad? Did you feel safe? Is there anything that you wish that I knew? And that's a really excellent question, because when you asked all the other ones, there's one more thing that's bothering them. That might be the last question that kind of gets them to talk about something that may have happened. So safe passwords. What is a safe password? If anyone ever showed up and says that they're coming to get them, so say that your mom has been hit by a car and she sent me to bring you to the hospital, your child can ask, what is the password? If that person doesn't provide it correctly, the child knows to run and scream for help and not to go with them, no matter who it is. So keep passwords very simple. For instance, the color blue, but change it periodically. Or make it a special occasion where you create the password so that they remember it. Tell them the password is not to be shared with anyone but immediate family, and the parent will only give it to anyone that is supposed to be sent to pick them up. Give kids ownership of their bodies. As young as 18 months, tell your child that their body is theirs. By 2 to 3.5 years old, they know that their bodies belong to them and they can reserve certain parts as private. Even if it's something like holding hands or having a friend hug or kiss them, they have the right to say no if they don't like it. We should never force kids to hug a family member if they don't feel like it. We need them to be able to take ownership of their body and feel comfortable when they don't feel comfortable of being able to say no, that they didn't like that. Some practical tools. You can check with your mobile service provider for family safe plans. Bark, for example, monitors online activity, and it's something that you can keep an eye on in terms of what the child is having access to on their phone. Some families just want the security of being able to reach their child, but they don't want them exposure to everything online. And so these other apps such as Bark can really be helpful with that. Sometimes they actually sell cell phones with the app built into it. And so even if your child logs in on somebody else's device, it can ping you if there's something inappropriate that's going on. Here are some online safety resources. If you want, feel free to take a picture of these because you might not remember them later. Protect Young Minds, Internet Safety from Shared Hope International, Internet Safety 101 Quick Guides, more info on the dangers of porn, fighting the new drug. There are multiple blog articles online at defendyoungminds.org, and I recommend some of the ones listed here. 5 things teens wish their parents knew about porn, digital safety planner, a 3-step plan for parents, is my child ready for a smartphone? And these are some books that are helpful to educate children. Different age groups are represented here, like Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and from Opal Singleton, Seduce, The Grooming of America's Teenagers. And this is the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. You can take a picture of this as well. This is, not something you regularly would, have, access to without looking it up. And so you can keep this accessible. So in the event that you needed to make a report online, anything child related in terms of Florida area, you could contact law enforcement. You can contact Department of Children and Families to get involved. They're certified DCF workers who know exactly how to handle the human trafficking space. I think that's it for me. Stop sharing. Now, if we had any questions that had shown up in the chat.
Let's see, we didn't have any questions, but we did have, yeah, I agree, Michelle. Oh, King, do you have a question? Or is that a yes in agreement with the material? Okay, Bark, yeah. So there's a comment agreeing that a Bark as a tool to monitor internet connectivity is important. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I'll ask a question. When I think about the three C's that you mentioned, which I think are fantastic, right? I also think about the parent, where there has to be this kind of a balance, this dance that a parent does between being the parent and also being the parent that's not necessarily a friend, but presents in a way that makes that child comfortable enough to share those things that would instantly cause a reaction of concern, right? Or discipline. And sometimes when a parent responds in that way, they automatically, that child just shuts down, obviously is hurt, is confused, and remembers that and no longer wants to share. So what do? They turn to a peer, who in many cases is not the great source for information like that. So what would you say to that, Heather, for parents in the room who this might be a first time hearing this and they're saying, okay, I think I may want to try that strategy, but are concerned that if they're too friendly, right, then there isn't that parent-child relationship that's necessary. But then if they're not friendly enough, that eventually that could push that child away.
Yeah, so you're kind of alluding to this balance, and that's what it is. We're not being so far, hard and harsh, and we're also not being like, I'm your best friend, right? Developing conversations. Kids are not, especially starting to get into like middle school and high school. They come home from school, they don't want to tell you anything, So, developing questions, having time where you spend, whether it's on the drive home from school. I know me and my son, we take martial arts. Most of the time when we talk about stuff, it's on our way to and from martial arts or at the dinner table. I know it's not something that, a lot of families have kind of gotten away from because we're busy, right? And we have a lot going on, but finding those moments, those conversations usually come up the best in those kind of, informal situations, or just kind of going around the table and asking everybody, what was the best thing that happened today? What was one thing that you learned today? Just getting used to the dialogue will help so they don't feel like you're interrogating them, and we do need to be their parents, we do need to enact discipline, we need to do these things in order to help keep our kids safe. And I tell my child, it helps that I kind of work in that environment, so he knows kind of the things that I see without telling him too much, but just knowing that there are risks and we're doing the things that we can, to keep you safe. It's not that we don't trust you, right? It's that we know that there are bad people out there who want to do bad things, and we want to keep you as safe as possible.
Agreed. And in the chat, Michelle talks about, how she thinks about families forcing kids to hug and kiss relatives. And both Michelle and King say, you know what, children have a right to say no. And I can't agree more. You know, Michelle goes on to talk about a hug, a kiss as a greeting or goodbye. You know, and I think about that, right? In its innocence or its intended innocence, sometimes the recipient who isn't right, isn't upstanding, you know, is a perpetrator, can translate that or register that as something else or something more.
Yeah.
And that can be, you know, and that's where I think parents have to be vigilant, right? We have to pay attention. And it could be our sister, our brother, our mother, our father, it could be anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Michelle has a question. She says, my daughter is an adult. Are things like this taught in schools these days? Because not everyone gets the support at home.
Sure. I mean, it's definitely becoming more aware of it. And actually, the Florida schools have, the governor has enacted a bill in which they're required to teach about human trafficking. There's kind of a list of things that they need to teach about, drugs, you know, kinds of things. There's a whole list. And you should be able to actually go online to your school district. I know we're here in Lake County. I can go on and I can actually see what that curriculum looks like. I don't exactly know everything that they're teaching. And so hopefully it's, you know, realistic things that they're teaching about, but they are beginning. But if, you know, your child was already an adult, they didn't learn this. I can tell you that years ago. But they are starting to hear more about it. I also don't want it to go the other way, but it becomes so common language. You know, like we've went from talking about human trafficking and sex trafficking, it's just become trafficking, right? It becomes like, uh, so we become so used to the idea that it's almost like it, you know, it's not a big deal or it doesn't exist or this is somebody else. It very easily can get wrapped up into it really, really quickly.
I agree with that. Let's see. Okay, another question has come in the chat. Heather, I'm interested in your experience as a nurse. Have you come into contact with child trafficking victims? And what were the identifiers? That's a great question.
So a lot of times, so unfortunately, her human trafficking cases are our most challenging because of this trauma bond that's often created between the trafficker and the child. There is an immense loyalty between, and they very often don't want to give them up, even though they're in some ways they're experiencing, you know, violence and, you know, side effects of drug use and all this terrible stuff. They're also getting something as a reward for it. And it actually creates issues in their brain, and, you know, neurotransmitters and all kinds of stuff that go on. They want that. They want that approval from their person. They also could be very afraid of the person that if they give them up, they're going to be in trouble. Their family's going to be hurt, something like that. So they're probably our most difficult cases. They usually come in resistant and they don't want to talk. So sometimes we actually have to engage them on more than one occasion and try to get them some help. And I would say whether it's adults or kids, this trauma bond that is created, many people don't understand, well, why do they go back to their trafficker? And it really is in relation to this trauma bond. It's really difficult for others who've not had that experience to understand why they would go back. But it's unfortunately that's what we see often. So it's usually reported by somebody else. So either a child went missing and they find a child, and there are certain clues that tell us. So maybe they've been posting things online. Maybe they're, one of the big clues is if your kid is coming home with items that you haven't purchased, you need to be asking questions where they got that from. Other cell phones are usually given to them, so they have another way of communicating with their trafficker. Money that they're getting, because they could be either selling themselves or selling pictures and they're taking a cut. Drug use, selling drugs, all those kinds of things. So those are kind of like big warning signs. If your kid is coming home with clothing, phones, other things that you haven't purchased them, really finding out that. So those are kind of some of the big things that we see that would make somebody concerned that somebody might be trafficked, other than just wind up and missing.
Thank you so much. King has a comment. It's sad that this is what the world has come to, but the reality of it is you are responsible for your child's safety. I would rather be wrong than have them find out I was right.
Yeah. At the end of the day, right? That's how will you feel as a parent if you drop the ball in it somewhere? I could have, I should have, right? You're going to have all those thoughts going around in your head. If something like this were to happen to your child. So, I mean, my son knows. My son knows he's going to be 16 in a couple of weeks. He doesn't go anywhere. I don't know those people. They've gone through the interrogation. I have to know who, where he is, who he's with. I need to know these people. Like, it's just, you really can't be too careful without also being like extreme overprotective. He knows. He asked me, can I go somewhere? Who, what, when, where, why, how? Let me know, you know?
Right. And I mean, that's due diligence, right? And I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I mean, please continue, My mom does, and I'm an adult, and I still get, where are you at? And so um that's just, I mean, that's a great thing. I want to ask you about, I was reading a Department of Labor statistic, and this statistic was more on the lines of labor trafficking. And it talked about the different countries and different sectors and agriculture and wheat and all these different things. And there's a question that popped in my mind, um, as it relates to children in the state of Florida. So now we know that we are sitting in the midst of an open border, right? We have millions of people coming in, to include children. So these migrants are coming, and though the state of Florida is not a sanctuary state per se, right? It does not mean that migrants won't migrate to the state. So, what do you anticipate, as a certified human trafficking practitioner, and a nurse, in the future, where you may come into contact with a child who may be a migrant, or related to, and there are indicators or identifiers of human trafficking. Um, what do you, how do you anticipate you would handle that? And also, is there legislation or conversation around immigration policies and what happens with children who are caught, in the crossfire?
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely see this something as being an issue long term. The first thing that you would need to do is report it to law enforcement. This is something that immigration gets involved with if we think that there are people here illegally and that they're conducting labor trafficking, particularly with children. So law enforcement would be the first thing. And I hold healthcare trainings for human trafficking because a lot of times there are certain areas that might see or have hints of these things happening. And the healthcare field is one of them. They might access healthcare for some reason, child is sick, they're injured, whatever. And so that's an important avenue of being able to identify. Hotels are another, either in labor or sex trafficking, just identifying if there's certain people who are coming in on a regular basis. People who have difficulty sharing, identification and address numbers, social security, like they're not going to have these things. And, we get a decent number of children who might be here illegally, and they get really concerned when DCF gets called because they're afraid that they're going to be, deported out of the country. I've never had an experience like that, when DCF is involved, they do everything that they need to do for that child, regardless of whether they're a citizen of this country or not. They're here, and they need to be treated in the same way as any other child would.
Thank you so much for that, answering those questions. Are there any other questions or comments or concerns? I know King is asking, who do you call? Who handles trafficking issues? And I think you really covered that, right? Law enforcement. Let's start there. DCF, you mentioned that organization, and perhaps there are others like Harbour Hope, who are doing the work, right, and can facilitate resources and services needed for that impacted individual. Hi, Tiffany, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you so much for the invite tonight, and also thank you so much for educating us. I have a question. I'm trying to see exactly how to word it. That's why I didn't type it in. And is there, do you have a class that you may teach with the parent and the child together that they would get this information? Like, for example, we would do a family night wherein we're teaching about or having different role play of educating the parent as well as the child, so that they would have that knowledge together as a family, and all of this information about human trafficking, because many times you don't even hear this, among most families. You don't hear about human trafficking, and not knowing that your child is on the Xbox, or online, like she said, Snapchat and all of the other. And there was a lot of different apps that I had never even seen before. So is there a class that's taught where you would have like a family night to go over that together, and they can kind of, be educated together?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So Harbor Hope does partner with other organizations. Actually, I think we have one coming up in a week or so. And so we do both parent and child. Now they're separate because the content's a little bit different, but they occur at the same time. So we have a parent caregiver training, we have a kid training, and we make it appropriate for depending, on who, but they're getting the same type of information. That way they're on the same page.
Definitely, I would like to have further information to, I have a lot of different families and different, from different ages, that I would like to share this information with. So if I can get an email, I would really love to connect with you guys.
Yeah, we can definitely connect with Ms. Lowery and share, the different trainings that are happening. As I mentioned, I do healthcare trainings for nursing staff and doctors, nurse practitioners, that kind of thing. And then we have, opportunities like this. And the presentation changes because things are always changing. Predators, they get alert to what's going on, and they change up their thing or get a new app. I mean, the apps are changing and coming up with new ones all the time. Just that alone is, like a full-time job,
Thank you so much for your question. And I mean, I'm actually interested in the role play collective family training. Let's see what Harbour Hope is interested in. Perhaps we could maybe cultivate and customize something on that behalf, because even King has chimed in and said, yeah, you touched on something. We should do a role play with families so children are aware how these things happen, how to deal with the situations and what to do. And I think that that's important, because if you already have that parent-child relationship, that trust factor, then you are in that scenario acting out and teaching and showing in real time. To me, it would resonate and would go a long way versus, hearing from your parent, okay, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And they get out amongst their peers, they get to school, they get to the cafeteria, whatever. And then all of that, because now I'm with my peers, I'm trying to be in the in crowd, and I'm doing whatever it is in that moment. Maybe some of that will get lost in the shuffle. So perhaps this is an opportunity. I'm all for it. But let's see what comes of it. I think it's a great idea.
And also for your kids. So one kind of piggybacking off what you were saying, how the kids, they end up talking to each other and they're kind of leaning on each other and they're in school and all that stuff, and they tell each other stuff. So maybe your child hears something else, somebody else going through, that somebody approached them, somebody sent them something, and that they should say something, and get them involved, or even tell the kid, like, hey, you shouldn't be talking to that, I mean, like, not just being in this like, oh, that's not for me to get involved with, and make sure that an adult knows about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns before we conclude? Okay, I don't see or hear anything. So I will just turn it back over to you, Heather, once more for closing remarks. Also, Sydney is with us as well. If you want to chime in or maybe give any closing remarks as well on behalf of your organization, we can take those now.
I just thank everybody for participating. I loved hearing all of your questions and comments. So many times we have, presentations and everybody's just, so I really enjoy, having that interactive experience and everybody taking it to heart and so seriously that this really is an issue that we need to take seriously. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and I'll also just jump in on behalf of Harbour Hope and just say thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be here and to really just talk about something that isn't talked about too much. So thank y'all for helping to just educate yourselves, bring awareness to just the community, to people around you, and really for taking the time to dig deeper, to ask those questions, and to really, put into action what it is that we're teaching and what it is we're speaking. So thank y'all all for being here.
And many thanks to Harbour Hope International. Heather, thank you so much for your sacrifice and time tonight. Sydney, thank you so much for your patience and all of the email bouncing back and forth and keeping us in communication. And to all of you who came on tonight, and who are here and who will watch the replay on YouTube. So we are streaming live, and I will send that email out to all of you all who registered for the meeting. Please share, share, share. This information is important. And so we want to continue to have this type of dialogue, right? That we can get out from behind our computers, our cell phones, and we can get into our communities and we can actually invoke change. That's what it's all about. So thank you again for coming all tonight, and we wish you all a wonderful evening. Please consider yourselves dismissed, and good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you again, ladies.
Yeah, it was great. I love the interaction. So good.
Thank you. I'll be in touch. And also, if you could send me the contact information so I can get that to the lady who was interested with her for her and her family and families that she said that may be interested. And I will also be in touch with a link to the live streaming of the video.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good night, ladies.